welcome to the Upside Down People podcast. Peter, so glad to be having a conversation with you here today, and great to meet you as well.
It's an absolute joy and a privilege to be with you, Caleb. Thank you so much.
The privilege is all mine. You've got a big smile on your face. Has your day started off well?
Yes, absolutely. We're a few hours later than you, Caleb. So it's been a great day. It's going to be hot here today in Melbourne, but looking forward to having this conversation. Been looking forward to it. So that's why I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. So am I. I'm really looking forward to just teasing out your thoughts a bit. I know you've recently written a book, Reversing the Decline. So we'll jump into the heart of the conversation in a bit, but something I like doing with my guests, just to humanize them a bit, just to put some flesh to the voice or the person that people are seeing, is just ask them a question to sort of get to know them a bit better. So the question I have for you is, what book, movie, or TV character do you think is most like yourself?
Most like myself. Oh gosh, that's a good question, Caleb. I don't watch a lot of movies or TV, so that's a bit of a problem.
Some would say otherwise.
I'm pretty, I'm structured person. Maybe I'll turn a question to you. I'll give you some insights about me, and you find out a TV character that may be similar. But I'm pretty structured in my life. I'm more of a thinker, a reflector, more an introvert than an extrovert.
Okay.
And a bit of a nerd as well. I love reading and researching things and writing things. Sadly, I don't watch. To be honest, when I grew up in Egypt. Yeah. And my dad didn't allow us to have a TV at home. My dad was a pastor and very serious about walk with Jesus. And so we only watched sport, really. And so I thought when I grow up and have the opportunity to have my own family, I would be watching TV, restoring the days that the locusts eat. But that's not the reality. I don't think I watch TV at all. Only sports.
So you mentioned you love reading. Is it do you enjoy fiction, non-fiction, a mixture of both? And
I love non-fiction. I have been told I should read a little bit more fiction, but I love non-fiction, and I read primarily in the area of spiritual formation. I read a little bit of early church fathers. I love education and anything to do with the human person and how we can develop and become the kind of people that shows the potential that we have as a result of being created in God's image. That's roughly very specialized in my reading. When I have a family, I have a family, 3 children. We've been married for 30 years. A lot of my time is gonna be really intentional, because I wanna be available for the kids. I wanna be available for the family, but I also wanna grow and develop. And so I'm pretty structured in the way I do things most of the time, Caleb.
That's awesome. No, I like that, and I think that's something really valuable in our culture and in a place where we can be so distracted and our attention can be drawn to so many different things and away from, like you're saying, things that actually matter, like family or your kids and friendships and things like that. So I love that. So I'm curious, what brought you guys to Australia? So you said you grew up in Egypt?
That's right.
Yeah.
I grew up in Egypt. I came here when I was 15 years of age, Caleb. My dad, as I said, is a pastor in Egypt. He's now in his 90s, so a little ahead. But back in those days, it was pretty dangerous for people who reach out to non-Christians in our environment. I'm imagining things maybe a little bit easier today. But back then, my dad was imprisoned for a year when I was 8 years of age.
Wow.
And he was imprisoned for his faith for about 318 days, to be precise. And then the second time round, he would have been imprisoned for life because he did baptize people, non-Christians, hundreds of those.
Wow.
Back in the day when no one would be willing to do that kind of stuff in Egypt because it was prohibited. People were imprisoned and others were killed as a result of proclaiming the faith and baptizing non-Christians. So the second time round, we were actually given a presidential decree to leave Egypt. And we came to Australia 1989.
Wow. Yeah. That's a crazy story. How was that, experiencing that as a son, seeing your father go through persecution and face adversity?
Well, it changes you, Caleb. I think it provides a different perspective on Christianity, a different perspective on life, and a different perspective on family. I guess the first time round, when my dad was in prison, I was 8 years of age. Actually, I had they celebrated my 8th birthday in prison. We were only allowed to see my dad 15 minutes every 40 days.
Wow.
And to be absolutely honest, 15 minutes would have been generous. They wouldn't allow us to stay there for more than 10 minutes.
Wow.
So it was pretty heartbreaking. I was pretty close to my dad, and to not be able to be around him. Obviously, in our family, it was like a funeral every day because we didn't know. It's not like you're innocent until proven guilty. In our system back in Kara, you're guilty until proven innocent, and we didn't know what the crime that Dad had committed.
Right.
So he was in prison with other clergy and people in the church, in the Coptic church. But we didn't know anything about him. It was all hush-hush. So it was quite scary. That's from a family perspective. I did miss my dad deeply. And we cherished the days after that. When he came out of prison, then it was so special to have him. And maybe it connected our families even more. In terms of Christianity, you recognize that Jesus is not just words that you speak. It's not about a Christianity that gives you all that you want. And if God doesn't give you what you wish for, then you're entitled to say, "See you later."
Right.
It provides a different perspective of His worth. If Jesus is worth suffering for, He's majestic. And I realized that my dad's faith in good times and in bad times did not waver. In fact, he wrote a song in Arabic back in the prison day. It says, "With you, O Lord, with you we rejoice all the time. Even in prison we rejoice with you." And I'm like, my gosh, sometimes I'm not even rejoicing outside of prison.
Right.
So it gives you a perspective of Christianity and of Jesus and His worth and majesty. That is, you can't read about it in books.
Right.
You see. But on a personal level, it also, for me as a young person, the first time I was 8 years of age, the second time I was 15 years of age, obviously created a little bit of trauma. Where you had to, initially you don't know, you just push through and you think this is life. But when I was a little bit older and in ministry, I recognized there were some reactions or responses that I had to situations, particularly in ministry, that were quite exaggerated. So I began to see a counselor for 2 years. It was a trauma counselor, body trauma kind of counselor.
Right.
One of 3 people in Melbourne that I was referred to by a psychologist in our church. He wasn't a Christian. but he did help me dramatically. Other
Wow.
than the fact that it was $140 every 2 weeks, it was fantastic. Other than that,
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
learn that we're a holistic being. We have a spiritual aspect, we have an emotional aspect, we have a physical aspect, and maturity is dealing with all the underlying layers of our being that fuel the way we see, shape the way we see life and fuel our actions, whether through desires or fears. So that's been my story as a result of my experiences with that in prison.
Yeah, that's brilliant that you sought that help. I think what I've come to learn is I think since like the age of enlightenment, we sort of have separated our mind and our body and our soul. So we've it's almost like that Gnosticism view where your body is temporary and bad. So you can sort of think through your trauma or think through your pain, and that's the way to get through it is by separating yourself or dividing yourself. When what you're saying is like, well, I think redemption is a holistic picture, right? So it's
Love it.
something that God wants to heal us, our bodies, heal our minds, heal our souls, and He's given us like incredible help all around us. I love that's how the psychologist suggested and how you sort it out as well, because yeah, it makes us be able to help people better as well. It's like the old saying, hurt people hurt people. So if we haven't dealt with our trauma, how are we supposed to enter into someone else's trauma? And there's so much trauma all around us.
Oh, that's so true, Caleb. I love the holistic way you consider the human person, and I think when it comes to thinking about spirituality, discipleship, spiritual formation, and our focus in our organization we call Generation Jesus, that a person is holistic person. We are thinkers, absolutely. And we're no denying of that, but we're not just brains on sticks. We're
Yeah,
not
right.
just cognitive people. We're thinkers, we're feelers, we're deciders, and we have agency. And we're also doers, and we can't separate any of that. We're relational beings within a community. We are formed, we are developed, we become the kind of people that God created us to be. We are created in the image of a triune God. We're relational beings who change and transform and develop as we look holistically and cater holistically for every aspect of our being. So I love that, and the Gnostics did, separate matter and the spirit, and it hasn't been a great differentiation. It complicated things, and it's whilst we don't accept the heretical views, I think practically many of our environments, Christian environments, truly are implicated by this dualistic view of the human person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so just moving on. So you mentioned you're part of an organization that you founded, Generation Jesus, and you've done a bunch of research out of that place, I believe, where you've explored why adults, or specifically young adults, are leaving the church in Australia. I'm really curious to know what have you found in that space? What's I suppose what led you into that space, and then what have you found the problem to be why people are leaving the church?
Yeah, well, this is a subject that is so close to our hearts, Caleb. Young adults is the area where God has enabled us to see the greatest fruit over our last 20 odd years of ministry. And we wasn't the focus on young adults when we first started in ministry, but we came to Jesus. as young adults, like genuine following of Jesus. We came as young adults, and we were surrounded by a group of young adults who loved Jesus wholeheartedly and impacted the way we saw the world as a result of our interactions together. So we grew up realizing that if you impact young adults, you're going to impact the next generation. Because obviously growing up as a child in a family has a tremendous impact on how people view God and view spirituality. So over the years, we developed our investment in young adults, and around 5 years or so ago, we began to specialize in really discipling young adults and equipping them to be Jesus-like humans. And we wanted to work with young adult ministries to enable them to multiply Jesus-like disciples and disciplers. You look at between 2016 and 2021, the census, the Australian census, tell us that young adult demographic is one of the greatest decline, 18% or less affiliation with Christianity in that age demographic. That's almost 20% of people that declined in their affiliation with Christianity. We recognize through the census that 46.5% of Australians declare themselves, or young Australians declare themselves nones. That is, they have no religious affiliation. When I did all the calculation, I recognized that from 15 to 34 years of age, there's about 70% of these young Australians that have no Christian affiliation. We're in a bubble. In the church, sometimes we're in a bubble because we've got a number of young adults who are active and fired up and going out and participating in various ministry opportunities and investing in worship and investing in the youth. We get this illusion that because of our church environment, that we have some young people doing great work, it minimizes and gives us the delusion that all is going well, but it's not.
Right.
All is not well with our Australian, with young Australians and their affiliation with Christianity. So our heart broke for that. And we imagined, as we look through and trace the data, the older, you see the kids growing up, the more decline. In fact, there's researchers at Monash University a few years back said that younger people have a whatever attitude towards religion, whatever attitude towards God and religion. So we are becoming more and more secular as a society, and we have to do something different. We have to do something different. So in response to the other aspect of your question about young adults and why they're leaving the church, there are so many different reasons. Okay, you probably are aware of most of those, Caleb, yourself, because I know you're interested in that kind of stuff. There is significant research that have been done about why youth and young adults are not affiliating with Christianity. There is a research that was done in 2020 through Alpha Crucis College, a doctor of ministry research examining particularly what they call the Gen Y, young adults, and 18 to 34, I think, and why they've left the faith. I think there was, surveys with over 250 people and interviews and all that kind of stuff. So it was a very reliable research. And they discovered 8 different reasons why young adults leave the church. There is one, actually, a study that was done in Perth, and the Baptist denomination, of why young people are no longer affiliating or engaging in the church. So there's a fair bit of work, some work is done in the US. So I tried to look at this kind of stuff and differentiate between symptoms and causes.
Okay.
Because we can have a lot of symptoms, and we can attempt to manage those symptoms, or make them, the main reason that we change our practice or ministry approach. But they're just symptoms. Like one of the reasons that has been declared as one of the reasons why young adults leave the church, Australian young adults leave the church, and that first research by Boha, it says because they think Christianity or church is boring. That was the eighth one.
Yeah.
Or another one, because people are in a bad experiences in their churches. I reckon all of these are symptoms.
Right.
One of the main things that he discovers, which he associates with the greatest number of responses, is to do with the beliefs and general beliefs and practices of Christianity. So I looked at all the various symptoms and causes, and I came up with 3 different reasons. They are not the reasons. They're just my interpretations, observations, and reflections on the data. And we have 20 people who are part of our team who are fully young adults in their 20s, all early 20s to late 20s. So we also have our hands-on kind of work with young adults who have been in church and have friends who have been in church and left. And I will propose to you, Caleb, that there are 3 primary reasons or causes why young adults are disaffiliating or not affiliating with Christianity and leaving the church. Number 1 is the message of Christianity. Number 2 is the method of discipling young adults in a church. And number 3 is the commitment of young adults to reach out and commit to disciple their peers. They are the 3 main reasons that I've written about in the book, Reversing the Decline. Finding different literature and empirical data to support those kind of reasons, and obviously providing some potential recommendations, solutions to these 3 problems.
Right. So the 3 problems: the message, the method, and the commitment. What would you say, just looking at the message of Christianity, what would you say has been the message, or what message have you found people hearing that has caused them to withdraw?
Yeah. Well, literature tells us, particularly came from the US, but once I share it with you, I'm confident that you would affiliate with it and say, I've heard that kind of message, But the literature that came from America about young people, it says, and it's verified here by some researchers in the Christian Research Association several years ago, it's that young people receive something called, or a kind of faith, or a version of the Christian faith that is being termed moralistic therapeutic deism. Moralistic therapeutic deism. I will explain that in a second, but I'm going to try to say to you in one word that our young people have been sold a kind of Christianity that you can term transactional Christianity.
Right.
So I'm going to come to the moralistic therapeutic deism in a sec, but let me just give you my heart. I think we as a church wanted to attract as many young people as possible to the Christian faith. So we said, how will these people come to Christ? We need to offer them some benefits. Right. That, if we tell them that if you come to Jesus, you're going to get this, and that, and if we make the benefits greater than the cost, oh man, they're all going to rush to the front, put their hand up, we sign the paperwork, and we'll say we've got 537 people made decisions for Jesus today. Hallelujah. Give us all the funds that you possibly can and come and follow our church next week. That is not the Christian gospel.
Right.
The Christian gospel was about denying ourselves, following Jesus daily, and becoming a new kind of humans. It's not a transactional Christianity, it's a transformative Christianity. Yeah, so this moralistic therapeutic deism, first of all, it speaks of that God wants people to be good, that just be nice. Come on, this is Christian, be nice. And then therapeutic, that God is like the divine butler, God is the vending machine. God is the therapist that is going to make me feel calm and happy, address my problems when I come to Him with problems. Whatever I need is the cosmic vending machine, so to speak. It's a very self-centered approach to God, that God is going to help me out. God is going to resolve my issues. God is going to provide me what I need. But then this deism figure, he's distant from me. He's not involved in my life. He's going to address my needs and change the things that trouble me without demanding a change in my identity, purpose, or lifestyle. And researchers, particularly in the area of young adults in America, they said that when young adults receive this, and the rubber hits the road once they leave home and in the transitional young adulthood period, they become disillusioned and they leave the faith.
Right.
It's that straightforward, because we've been selling them a lie. That Christianity is all about you. And a self-centered brand of Christianity backfires. I say that the door that is wide open by presenting the gospel as a self-centered solution to your whatever you want, it becomes a big open back door, because they get this illusion. They say, well, it's not what you made it to be. It's not just I come to Jesus and give Him my problems, give Him my sins, and He give me whatever I need right here in the here and now, and then He'll give me a fire insurance ticket and give me a ticket to heaven, or whatever it might be. God is so removed from this equation. God becomes a cosmic vending machine, and that's not what Jesus came and did on planet Earth. So the solution that I am proposing is that we go back to the very concept that Christianity is the new humanity. Christianity is the new humanity. It's not a set of beliefs and assertions. It's not just a code of behavior and modification of our behaviors. It's not just benefits, cost and benefits, and a ledger, a profit and loss kind of sheet. Christianity is transformation of who I am. Because Christianity didn't come just merely to replace God's original design. It just came to restore God's original design. It's one plan. God didn't have plan B. God created us to be in His image, to first of all have a relationship with Him, secondly to reflect His character, and thirdly to represent Him in the earth, and to function in such a way that God's presence is in and through us. But when we failed God in this project, He didn't say, stuff that first project, I'm going to do something different, I'm going to call it Christianity. No, Christianity is the new humanity. Ephesians chapter 2 says that Jesus came and created out of both the Jews and the Gentiles a new class race, a new humanity, that will become Jesus-like humans. It's not just a Christian, you become a Jesus-like human, because the ultimate human, who is in the image of God, or the image of God, representation of God, the core of God's glory. It says, if you see me, you see the Father. Jesus is the image of God, and He shows us not only what God looks like, but what we look like by our union with Him.
Yeah.
So if we going to give young adults something that's wholehearted, gritty, all-in kind of Christianity, it has to be something that transforms us, not just gives us something and demands nothing.
Right. That's I find that super fascinating. Just going back to the 8 points that you said, that you're sort of deciphering through what were symptoms and what were causes, and you mentioned some of the responses. I think part of those 8 responses, 2 of them was people were finding the church boring, and people were essentially hurt by the church or experienced trauma within those. And then going into the message that's spoken, the transactional message that you're saying the church speaks, and then the moralistic therapeutic deism, I find it super fascinating how the church often tries to deal with the symptom. So it's like that transactional one is like, how can we make church more appealing? How can we get more people in, like you're saying, and have this transaction between we'll make it less boring per se, or
That's right.
we'll entertain you, we'll restructure the service,
That's right.
and then the other side of that is that moralistic therapeutic deism is like often people do experience like legitimate trauma and hurt from the church or in the church, and I think the cultural narrative is you look inward. Individualism is the sort of king on the throne of our hearts in this culture. So it's like, you know what's best for you. You self-soothe. You do all the selves, and that's the message that the church is speaking as well, or encouraging. So I find it fascinating how dealing with the symptom ends up, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's actually pushing people away. It's not answering, like what you're saying, that those, what's the cause, what's the root issue here. It's actually trying to deal with the symptom, and it's causing people to walk away or to try find what is. I know Gen Z really, same with millennials, but particularly Gen Zs, really crave gritty authenticity, something that's real, something that's not this out there in the ether, wherever it is. They want something that's real, that's
Right.
the part of the human experience to answer those deep questions of the heart.
I couldn't agree more.
So why, I suppose then, why do churches continue to try and deal with the symptoms, not trying to bag the churches out or anything like that, genuinely trying to unpack, well, what can churches then do to better disciple young adults, to better deal with these issues, these symptoms that young adults and adults alike are feeling and experiencing, of hurt, trauma, anxiety, feeling bored in church, whatever it may be, craving authentic relationship. How can churches sort of create a discipleship framework that really gathers people in and holds them there?
Yeah, well, you're spot on, Caleb. Your question and your comments are so well placed in a conversation. I've got several ideas that are brewing in my mind. I'll share them briefly. Number one, there is no condemnation on what most God-honoring people are doing in ministry. They are literally doing their very best, and people are going to extremes to facilitate an environment to reach out to people that don't know Jesus and try to engage and disciple those who are in the church. I work with churches all the time. I've been a pastor for 20 plus years, so I know that every God-honoring minister and God-honoring leader are going over and above. That's probably the reason why we're seeing so much burnout in ministry, because we're going, striving and doing everything that we can, but when there is no reciprocal results to the amount of energy so we keep expending, but we're not being, getting things in return. That's why people feel exhausted emotionally, physically, spiritually, and so on. So I want to honor what you're saying, and I want to support and affirm what you're saying, that this is to support ministers, not to pick on ministers or leaders or churches. They're doing their very best, and I applaud them. I'm one of them. I'm not on the outside like an expert coming to speak. I am 100% there with the leaders experiencing the same point of tension and pain they're experiencing. So why are we doing that? Most of the time the system is bigger than the individual. And we often replicate the kind of culture or we don't like to say tradition, but the tradition of our denominations or our spirituality over the years. And we received a particular way of ministry and a particular message, and I'm not going to mention the method of discipling yet. I'll come back to that in a sec. But in terms of just the message, we've received a message and a particular emphasis that have served us well. It's like they say, Tim Keller in particular, you're aware of Tim Keller, a theologian in the US who have, a global phenomenon, really. And the late Tim Keller was talking about that when he first started a ministry, the biggest thing was guilt. And the message, the gospel message, was attempting to address that. He said that was like his father's generation. They were ridden with guilt, and the gospel message had to speak about the salvation that would release you from the guilt of sin. He says these days, or over his ministry period, that's not a problem that people seeking answers for.
Right.
It's like we're offering a solution to a problem people don't have. They're not worried about it anymore. And he's speaking about as the eras progressed, and then there is the emphasis on identity and authenticity and so on. And he's saying the gospel addresses all of that. So we need to not change the core of the gospel, but the way the gospel is presented sometimes need to be evaluated. So I guess one of the things that I would say why people are offering this transactional Christianity is because for a period of time, people in a Christian culture, they diverted away from God and they just needed that little push to bring them back. But now we are so far away that is literally almost like biblical illiteracy everywhere that people don't know the basics of the basics. So they don't need just one little leap. They need leaps along the way. They need a redefinition of what Christianity is all about. So I think people are doing it because they've been presented with a tradition, a way of presenting a particular message. Secondly, because it works. Right. If you're going to offer a particular gospel presentation at the end of an event or an evangelistic event, well, it's countable, it's measurable, and therefore it provides you with a sense of a measure of your energies and a reward for your investment. So it's helpful. If you're going to get people to just simply say, yeah, I receive that, well, you need to offer them with a case, with a persuasive case that they're gonna see the benefit right here and now. If that's what we no longer want to progress with people and walk with them along the journey. Because we want immediate results. We want somebody to say now, I've received Jesus right here and now, regardless whether they actually understand that or not. But we need that kind of feedback to motivate us to keep on going in the midst of the hardships and the exhaustion of doing ministry. So it's almost something we've received, and also something that intrinsically replenishes us. And to be absolutely honest, I believe for some, they haven't done theological reflection on that message and the implication of that message, whether sociologically or theologically, of what happens after people raise their hands, what happens after 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Right. They haven't looked at that. So they're not like being rebellious. They're not saying, this doesn't work, but I'm going to keep on doing it. I'm not sure I would buy into that. I'm not sure that people intentionally and deliberately doing the wrong thing. I feel they're doing it with a good heart, but they haven't actually examined a long-term approach to that message of Christianity. They believe, as soon as somebody raises their hand, even if they don't live with Jesus anymore, you know what? They are going to heaven, and if that's all I can do, so be it. And I would dare them reflect theologically on that assumption, because I'm not sure that it's biblical.
Right. Yeah, and it's often the case in those sort of cultures, or in terms of those church cultures. It's a very, I mean, it's a place to start off with, but if you remain there, it remains immature in the sense of you find that people continue to raise their hand and continue to respond to the same salvation call, same altar call, whatever the churches label it as, and there's this lack of understanding, like what you're suggesting, that the Christian walk is one of being transformed into the likeness of Jesus. And that's not an instantaneous result. That's something that takes years and years and years. It's something that we only fully experience on the day we die, when we're made whole and when we meet Jesus face to face. But up until that point, it's that walking with Jesus. And I love that imagery of what walking does. Is it's slow, it's something that you follow and you transform slowly, so you can't see the results straight away. It's not that immediate instant gratification that our culture so desires, but you look 5 years of who you were to who you are today, and then you can see, well, like the Holy Spirit has really helped me in my patience. You start to see fruit in different areas of your life. I once had an addiction to this, and now I can see that the chains are looser. So I think that's something that, in terms of the message of Christianity, something our culture really seeks instant gratification. And it's a dangerous place when the churches adopt that, because what it breeds is it doesn't cause you to turn to Jesus. And if it does, you sort of, like I think you mentioned at the start of this conversation, you look to God or to Jesus as this cosmic, I can't remember the word you used. I love
cosmic vending machine.
Cosmic vending machine is you put your money in and you expect something in return. But
That's right.
the gospel is so much more deeper than that. That whole
That's right.
that transformative message, and I think that's what young adults are craving.
I believe so. And just to add to your excellent comments, Caleb, is the idea of, some people will argue with us and say, this concept of transformation over lifetime, it's called sanctification. That's not what we're really talking about here. The message of the gospel, we want to present people with, correcting their stance with God, their position, what's well known as the concept of justification, where they put their faith in Jesus and they made instantly right with God. So they would argue that we need to do that and then we'll worry about the rest later.
Right.
A couple of thoughts I want to add. I used to have that very same concept, and my focus was on the method. So how do we help people that make that decision? I was thinking first-time decisions will result in full-time disciples. That was my concept. So I preached the same gospel until I encountered a quote by Dallas Willard, who is a philosopher, a spiritual formation, father of contemporary spiritual formation. And he said that the message we promote, or the message that we share, has direct impact on the life of being a disciple thereafter. And that was my first encounter with the idea. Our problem is not just the method of discipling, of how to help people become more and more like Jesus. It's actually the message doesn't set us up for a holistic experience of Jesus. And that's when I dug deeper over the years and recognized we sell a transaction, not a change of nature, not a regeneration. We sell simply a transaction, a business interaction, where you come to Jesus with your sin and you say, I'm sorry for my sins, I accept Jesus as Savior and Lord, whatever that means, and I believe I'm assured of eternal life. What I think the problem is not just a problem of process over the years. The problem, if we don't have the new nature, we cannot have process over the years.
Yeah,
see, that's the problem. If you don't start with the new nature, with the Holy Spirit, in Romans chapter 8, it says, whoever doesn't have the Spirit doesn't have Christ. If I'm not born from above, if I haven't been given the ability, the divine nature that Peter speaks about in 2 Peter 1, or that was prophesied in Jeremiah 31:30, about God depositing his nature, his communicable attributes to me, and I've become a Jesus-like human by grace, by the merit of Jesus's life, death, and resurrection. I receive that as a new nature. And this new nature is the only one that gets renewed in the image of its creator. But when we just do a transaction, then of course people are not seeing transformation over their lifetime, because it's only the things of the Spirit that can enable us to live like Jesus in the world. So I don't think it's just the process of becoming more like Jesus, but receiving a spiritual seed that grows over time to produce the fruit of the life of Jesus in us, which we call the fruit of the Spirit. But you have to receive the seed, the imperishable seed of Jesus in our hearts, not just a matter of telling people a transaction, give your sinner. No, it's far bigger than that.
Yeah.
Salvation is justification, sanctification, and glorification, because we are changed from the inside out by the power of the Spirit. It's not something that we can manufacture. It's an external thing to us that by the power of the Spirit becomes who we are over time.
Yeah, brilliant. And while you're speaking, I had the thought of alongside that transactional message is what it does is it creates an expectation that our needs are met instantly, or our wants are met instantly, and those are genuine needs and wants. So I empathize with so many people, myself included, who wrestle with anxiety and wrestle with these different weights of just being a human. And the transactional message is, well, look to Jesus and he'll take that away, which is, there's elements of that are completely true, but then it's also very misleading in the sense of when you look in the Bible, pain, suffering, anxiety, those aren't removed from people when they become a Christian or when they follow Jesus. In actual fact, those are probably, you could argue that those are amplified because that, like your father, you're in environments where the enemy doesn't want you to prosper, doesn't want you to flourish. So you experience more suffering, you experience more pain. And then like anxiety, depression, these are part of the human experience of being in a broken world.
That's right.
But the gospel is one that says to us we need to invite Jesus into those places. That, like, lament is something that is, you look through the Psalms, and majority of the Psalms are Psalms of lament. They're Psalms inviting God into our brokenness, into our pain, and hopefully putting your hope in Him to bring you through that place, that valley of the shadow of death. And I think that's maybe where churches can become more aware that, okay, well, is this message one that's leading people to inviting God into their brokenness, into their pain? Yeah. Or is it one to say, well, you're the center of the universe. You tell God what you need, and He'll make you better. Yes. And it's there's a slight difference. You know what I mean?
Exactly. He makes you better. That's undoubtedly. You know, we become like Jesus in the world. The first book of John tells us, you know, that in Romans chapter 8, verse 28 and 29, we all know the 28, that everything works out together for good for those who love it. But the most important part is those who are called according to His purposes, those whom He foreknew, predestined to become conformed to the image of His Son. That is the greatest miracle of all. Yeah, that brilliant. It's not just about God giving me something temporary, but even though He gives us everything richly to enjoy, but the greatest miracle, He gives me Jesus.
Yeah.
His spiritual DNA. He gives me the capacity to enjoy God in intimate relationship. Jesus called God Abba, and in Romans, the Spirit enables us to call God Abba. It's like we have the insane capacity to relate to God because of our union with Jesus. So the triune God lives within us, and we relate to God the way Jesus related to God because of Him, because of grace. And we relate to other people the way Jesus related to other people. We have inner life that manifests the character of Christ because He lives on the inside of us. We're able to impact the world, and young adults love to make a difference in the world, whether globally, nationally, personally. And it is because of our union with Christ. This is the greatest, better life that we receive. It's not a value add. It's not like I'm going to give you a couple of things to make your life better. I'm going to transform your life. I'm going to save you from empty way of life. Peter tells us in 1 Peter, I think, chapter 1 or 2 or something like that. Like we're being saved from the way we live our life in this self-centered, broken, selfish kind of life which has been distorted and marred. The images of God has been distorted in us. We are being reunited with the one that makes life better, but it's not because of the additions that He gives, but because of He makes us different.
Brilliant.
Right? So this is the message that needs to be re-articulated, because the other message might attract the crowds, but it won't keep them, and it won't change them, because it's just almost like an expression of interest, an emotional thing that it tells you you're going to receive something without being transformed from the inside out.
Exactly. And it's funny that people are often looking at what happens to a crowd, and if your message is one that, hey, come to Jesus, your life's transformed, and the crowd's never transformed, or the people following aren't transformed, or don't look different by the way they love each other or love others, or then it's an indication, well, let's probably not go there, because that's obviously not working. So it ends up biting you in the back anyway.
That's right.
So tell me about the sort of final part of what you speak about in your book, the discipling commitment. What does that look like? How can we engage in that?
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So we mentioned, Caleb, just to revise, we mentioned that the core issues related to young adults not affiliating or leaving Christianity, not being engaged with Jesus is, number one is the message, and we addressed that quite fully. Number two, I think, is the method of discipling. And number three is the commitment of young people to invest in others. Let me just briefly mention the method of discipling.
Yeah,
what
please
we
do.
do in the church, not and most Christian environments, is that we attempt to help people be transformed by speaking at them. And that goes back to your concept that you eloquently mentioned early on about that, us being thinkers or cognitive beings. So if you feed us with information and knowledge, it's going to change us. So we're reliant on just a Sunday sermon, or we're reliant on Bible studies that are very cognitively orientated and so forth. So we miss the transformation, and literature is so filled with empirical data to suggest that we're not seeing transformation in practicality. We're seeing change in knowledge and change in attitudes. They measure change in knowledge and attitudes, but we're not seeing proper transformation. In fact, there's a book called I just forgotten the transformation. I'll get the name will come to me in a sec, but it speaks about the idea that the discipleship approaches in the church are actually have no resemblance to anything that could create transformation. It's not because it's the church's fault. It's because of an incomplete approach to our humanity. We just fill the mind with things and we tell people go and do it. It's a Platonian kind of stuff. Go up the ladder of propositional knowledge and then go down the ladder and implement it. But we're more complex than that. We're created in God's image, and we have different ways where we're thinkers, we're feelers, we're deciders, or got agency, and we're doers, and all of that happens in community. So the first thing that we need to reconsider if we're going to see a transformation of our young adults and maybe other generations, but I just focus on young adults, is we need to have people in communities that are transparent, vulnerable, supportive, challenging, caring communities, so that people can be transformed as relational beings. You know, young adults, even Barna, when they did their research 2019, I think, about young adults 18 to 35 in New Zealand, Australia, you know, guess what? They titled the report The Connected Generation. Because this generation, not the text generation, and not the, you know, some people say they're entitled, I don't think so, or the entrepreneurs or whatever, but they are the connected generation. They desire to be connected.
Yeah, very good.
So we need, that's biblically speaking, theologians say that Christ brought people into community, didn't just disciple his disciples one-on-one, but he brought them into community despite of all the mess that would create. The church in Acts chapter 2, they were a community, right? So we need to create a community where people can, relational being can develop holistically to become more and more like Jesus. Jesus like humans, not just thinkers. Jesus like humans in every word. And we have 4 things that we suggest the community must do in order to disciple the holistic person into transformation. Number 1 is model. Model the life of Jesus. Not just talk about it, model it. Because people want to see the embodiment of that life and judge whether it's good for them or not. You know, when God wanted us to desire to become more like him, guess what he did? He sent Jesus and says, this is the version of what you could become. Hey, what do you reckon? So, man, I would love to be like that. I want to be selfless. I want to have the ability to be selfless. I want to have the ability to be kind. I want to have the ability to be wise. I want to have the ability to love on people when they're hard to love. I want to have the abilities. I don't want to struggle through my willpower to make that. I want to have the divine abilities to be that kind of person. Yes, that Jesus is worth becoming like, yeah?
Yeah.
So the first thing we need to do, Paul tells them in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 1, it says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And then he says to I think the Philippians chapter 3, you know, that they would imitate him and imitate those people whose examples are like him. Because we need to see an embodiment of what it's like to be a Jesus-like human. So we say the community need to model the life of Jesus. Our identity center is known as the mirror neuron center, where there is like 2 faces looking at each other. We only know who we are when we see it in other people. When somebody loves that way, we say, man, I'm possibly capable of doing that too.
Right.
You know, because you know, I can see my hand. If there were no mirrors, no selfies, no, you know, cameras, and I look at my hand and say, man, I must be black, you know? Why? I can't see my face, but I can see an aspect of my body, and I say, that's who I am. So when I look at other people and they live in a particular way that resembles the life of Jesus, say, I'm capable of becoming like that. I'm like them, because it's us, right?
Brilliant.
So the first thing, we want the community to model the life of Jesus. Secondly, we need the community to teach practices of Jesus. You know, and not just cognitive practices, but how do I hear from God? How do I discern God's will? How do I live in godliness? Like in education, we have something called communities of practice. That's social learning theorists explain that people are transformed, their identity and their practice and their way of being in the world, it transformed in something called communities of practice. And communities of practice have 3 things. Number 1 is common purpose. shared practices, that they have practices that they share amongst, and mutual engagement that they give and take together. So we need shared practices. We need to understand, what is it like to live the life of Jesus on earth? Paul keeps talking in every epistle. He talks, for Ephesians first 3 chapters, it's all about, the privileges in Christ. And then he speaks about the life of being like Christ in the last 3 chapters. And he says, forget your former way of living. This is the way we learn Christ, not learned about Christ. Yeah. There's a difference. This is the way we learn Christ, how to live like him in the world. And we need to teach one another that, and to discover it together in practice. The third thing we say, we need to facilitate opportunities for learning. So often in our environments, whether it's connect groups or teaching or preaching or whatever it might be, it's talking. Then you come towards the end, you say, write an application quickly. And in most groups that I've been part of, they say, well, we haven't got time to share that. So, all the best for the future. Let's pray.
Right.
So we put most of our time in learning. And we say that's maturity because you now know more. It's like you can write a sermon on purity, a beautiful sermon on purity, and be having an affair. It's like knowledge is not power if it's not lived out in a community with support and accountability. So we say we want to give people a opportunity to live it out. Jesus sends the disciples 2 and 2. He doesn't tell them, hey, let's learn about how you reach out. He says, go do it, man. There is opportunity for you to learn practically. I always say this, Jesus didn't teach Peter by helping him to think, but sink. Not think, but sink. He told him, come on the water. Had an experience of what it's like to be grabbed by Jesus. First of all, to learn that Jesus has the power, the divine power to make me walk on water. And when I fall, he picks me up and he doesn't judge me. He'll learn about Jesus not by thinking, but by sinking. So we need to give people opportunities to learn by discovery as they do the spiritual disciplines, as they reach out, as they, And the last thing we'll say, partner with people. Don't just help people go and do something and say, I pray for you, I'll see you next year or next week or next month. Nah, partner with them. Our discipling environment, we're always in love with people in practicality. We check on them regularly. We pray with them. When we find that they're going through a tough time, we'll fast with them. When they're going through exams or uni assignments or work endeavors or having conflict at home, we're there with them. We brainstorm with them. We support them. We examine their assumptions as a community. And we support them by actions. When somebody needing helping hand, we go and offer it. We don't just say, from far. It's like, we bless you. No, we're part of your life. We sink or swim together. You are part of me. If you're down, I'm down. If you're up, I'm up. Paul says, who falls and I don't, burn. That's why he speaks of another minister. He wrestles for you in prayer. Wrestles. Man, wrestling is hard work.
Right.
And he's wrestling for them, not for himself. You see that real love one another is shown in practicality. So I'm suggesting that discipling needs to have modeling, teaching, opportunities for learning, and partnering with people. It's holistic because our human beings are holistic people that requires us 4 aspects. Modeling is obviously because they're doers, teaching because they're thinkers, facilitating opportunities because they're feelers, and we feel our way in our experiences. We engage, or we inhabit the world emotionally, not cognitively. You feel it as you experience it. And finally, you partner with them because you're helping them to be firm deciders. They're not just making a decision and see you later. They're actually living it out, and you're helping them with conviction and understanding their own assumptions. So that's the method that I believe is holistic for humans to become more and more like Jesus in the world.
That's brilliant. And in all of that, I love how it's bringing it back into community and away from isolation, because I think it's so difficult to find meaning, to find identity when you don't have people around you. I think
So
that's
true.
something that we've lost in a Western culture, is that
Yes.
we try look within, we try tell people that they're able to, in and of themselves, find out who they are. When
Oh,
in
so
reality,
true.
we've been placed in community, in relationship, um, because that's who affirms identity, affirms how you look, what you're doing, and then also there's safety in that, right? Because if you're doing something harmful, the community is able to help steer you through that. And I think that also adds to no one person or no one denomination owns Jesus Christ, or no one culture owns Jesus Christ, but it's in community that we understand who he is as well, and we understand what it looks like to practice his way, to follow him, to do as he did. We can't do that in and of ourselves.
It's very thoughtful reflection there, Caleb. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I love it. So, just yeah, just sort of bringing it to a close. What would be your encouragement for? I suppose maybe two encouragements. One is for young adults who have experienced, I suppose, a disruption to their faith, or just even a turning away from church or organized religion. What would be your encouragement to them? And then secondly, what would be your encouragement to the church, as we're all a part of the church as well, and I'm sure there's many leaders who listen to this podcast as well, as we begin to think, how can we be better disciplers? How can we better commit ourselves to what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, first for the young adult that may have moved away from the organized religion, which is many of them, because of all types of reasons, judgmental, or it's outdated, or whatever it might be, hard, bad experiences that they've encountered. I would say to these young adults, you've moved away not from the real version of Jesus and Christianity. And once you rediscover that version, it will take your breath away. If
Brilliant.
I was you, I would also move away from that version of Christianity that doesn't have Jesus front and center. But you're invited to be a brand new person by the power of the Spirit. When you look in the mirror, you will see a kind of human that you enjoy having as you in the mirror, because Jesus becomes the kind of person that you love, not just from far away in the window, but also in the mirror. So I'm not
Awesome.
inviting you just to come back to the good old days, but I'm inviting you to come to Jesus and to his bride, the church, despite of how broken it is, but to Jesus first and foremost, that will transform who you are. And that's what deeply you are looking for. And most Christians, research tells us, who are part of a church at least monthly, have experienced greater level of satisfaction with life in their personal spiritual well-being, in their relationship, and in purpose. And I'm inviting you not just to come to a religious experience, but to someone that will transform your humanity. You're going to be a better partner. You're going to be a better friend. You're going to be a better coworker. You're going to be a better influential leader. Your life will be transformed gradually over time as Jesus manifests himself through you.
Brilliant. And yeah, what if people are wanting to find out more about yourself, the work that you do, grab a copy of Reversing the Decline, the book that you've authored, where would you direct them to?
We'll direct them to genj.com.au. That's our website. Our team looks after that, and our Instagram at genjofficial. And we've got a group of amazing young adults that will engage with you, and we'll be happy to help you in any possible way. But thank you for the awesome privilege of being with you, Caleb, and with your audience as well.
Oh, the pleasure's been all mine, Peter. I wish I can match your enthusiasm, and hopefully one day I can hang around you long enough to actually, like you're saying, that rubs off on myself, because I think this is a beautiful thing that you're doing. And yeah, the importance of seeing lives transformed and seeing people encounter the true Jesus, and yeah, just live in a manner that is imitating him, and his fruit is coming through their life. Is just, yeah, what an incredible...
You're actually doing that, Caleb. No doubt about it. Your life and your words and your demeanor reflects that character of Jesus, and we're so proud of what God is doing in and through you, brother. So onward and forward in Jesus.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Thank you.